The night my mother celebrated my high school graduation, she stood beneath a banner with my name on it, tapped a champagne glass with a fork, and told 80 people, "Taryn got the brains, thank God," because the pretty jeans clearly went to her sister. The room laughed. My father stared into his drink. My 16-year-old sister, Sloane, covered her mouth like she was embarrassed, but she was smiling too. Then Mom pulled her beside me for a photograph and said, "See? One daughter for running the business, one daughter for putting on the brochure." Somebody recorded it. By midnight, the video was already on Facebook. By 1 in the morning, I had taken $418 from the envelope where I kept my weekend job savings, placed my house key on my mother's kitchen counter, and walked out with one duffel bag. My mother told everyone I left because I was jealous of Sloane. My sister told people I had always hated being the plain one. My father told himself silence made him neutral. For 12 years, they barely mentioned me unless they needed something. Then, 3 months before Sloane's wedding, my mother sent me a message that said, "Your sister wants you there." This could finally fix the family. I almost believed her. On the wedding morning, I found out the truth. I had not been invited back to be Sloane's sister. I had been invited because they thought I would pay the last $36,000 of her wedding and then quietly stay out of the family photographs. 40 minutes before the ceremony, her fiancé read the messages proving it. He looked at Sloane in her wedding dress and asked, "Did you invite your sister because you wanted her here, or because you thought she'd be too desperate for a family to say no?" That was the first time in my life my mother could not talk fast enough to save the room. My name is Taryn Mercer. I was 30 when all of that happened, living in Minneapolis and working as director of guest operations for a small group of upscale hotels across Minnesota and Wisconsin. It was not the career my mother expected for me. She had expected me to stay in Iowa, finish a business degree, and eventually take over the paperwork side of Mercer Home and Design, the furniture and flooring showroom my parents had built outside Cedar Rapids. In my mother's version of the future, Sloane would be the beautiful face clients remembered, and I would be the competent daughter in the back office, making sure invoices cleared and deliveries arrived. Mom did not invent that division after we became adults. She raised us inside it. From the time I can remember, Sloane was beautiful and I was smart. Those were not compliments in our house, they were assignments. If I received an A, Mom said, at least one of my girls inherited my organizational brain. If Sloane walked into the room wearing a new dress, Mom said, "There's my movie star." When relatives asked whether we were close, Mom loved answering, "They're complete opposites. Taryn lives in her head. Sloane lives in the real world." I wore glasses from age 8 to 14. I had thick brown hair that frizzed in Iowa humidity, braces until sophomore year, and a body that grew at different speeds in different directions. There was nothing remarkable or tragic about how I looked. I was a normal girl. My mother simply talked about my appearance so often that normal began to feel like failure. Sloane was naturally photogenic, blonde like Mom, with big blue eyes and the kind of smile adults rewarded before she finished a sentence. She learned early that rooms softened when she entered them. I learned early to enter rooms carrying something useful. At birthday parties, Sloane greeted guests while I refilled ice. At family Christmas, she modeled whatever outfit Mom bought her while I helped Dad assemble toys. When the showroom held customer events, Sloane handed out sparkling cider and posed for pictures. I entered orders into the computer because Mom said I was better suited for important things. It sounded like praise until you noticed important things were always invisible. Dad was not cruel. Sometimes I think that made everything harder. He taught me to drive in the delivery van. He brought me coffee during exam week. When Mom went too far, he occasionally found me later and said, "You know she doesn't mean it the way it sounds." That was his idea of protection, explaining the weapon instead of stopping the person swinging it. At 16, I started working Saturdays at a grocery store because I wanted money Mom could not comment on. I saved almost everything. By graduation, I had $418 and a vague plan to attend community college while helping at the showroom. Then came the party. Mom loved hosting events inside the showroom after closing because the furniture created ready-made conversation spaces and every photograph looked polished. She hung a banner that said, "Congratulations, Taryn," above a staged living room display. She ordered cupcakes in my school colors. She invited relatives, employees, customers, neighbors, and enough people from church that I spent the first hour thanking adults I barely knew for $20 bills inside greeting cards. For once I thought the day might belong to me. Then Mom picked up the microphone. She praised my grades first. National Honor Society, academic scholarship, acceptance letter. People applauded. I relaxed. Then she said, "Now, Taryn has always known she isn't the glamorous daughter." A few people chuckled. "But that's okay. Somebody has to understand spreadsheets." More laughter. She called Sloane forward. My sister was wearing a pale pink dress and looked beautiful. Mom turned us toward the crowd as if demonstrating two fabric samples. Sloane got the looks. Taryn got the brains. God knows how to balance a family. That was the line somebody caught on video. I remember scanning the room for my father. He stood beside a leather sectional staring at the floor. That hurt more than the laughter. My mother could be cruel because she believed cruelty was honesty. My father knew better and chose comfort. I walked away before cake. In Dad's office, I opened the metal box where I stored my cash, counted $418, and put it in my wallet. I wrote no dramatic note. I placed my house key beside the graduation card Mom had signed, "Love, Mom and Dad," without adding a personal message. Then I took the duffel bag already in my car, because I had planned to sleep at a friend's house after the party, and I drove north. I had an old classmate attending community college in Rochester, Minnesota. She could not house me, but she gave me the name of a cheap extended stay motel where her cousin worked. The room cost more than I could sustain. By the third night, I was calling every hotel in the area, asking whether they needed front desk help. A Holiday Inn near the interstate needed an overnight desk clerk. The manager looked at my graduation date, then at my one duffel bag, and asked whether I had somewhere safe to live. I lied and said yes. He hired me anyway. 2 weeks later, a banquet server named Corinne Vega learned I was sleeping in my car between shifts and told me I could rent the storage-size second bedroom in her apartment if I paid on time and never touched the iced coffee labeled with her initials. Corinne was 24, blunt, exhausted, and the first adult woman I trusted because she never disguised criticism as love. When I forgot to take out trash, she said, "Taryn, take out the trash." She did not say, "This is why you'll never have a husband." When I wore an ugly sweater, she said, "That sweater is tragic," then asked whether I wanted tacos. She did not turn clothing into character. The difference was almost shocking. Mom called from unfamiliar numbers for months. The first time Corinne answered, Mom said, "Tell Taryn, running away won't make her prettier or less difficult." Corinne put the phone on speaker and said, "Do you rehearse being cruel, or does it come naturally?" Mom hung up. I stood in the kitchen shaking. Corinne opened a cheap notebook and said, "Write down exactly what she said." Why? Because people who rewrite reality depend on everybody else forgetting the original version. I wrote it down. I started saving messages after that. Not for revenge. For sanity. Mom's version of events traveled faster than mine because I was not telling one. Relatives messaged that my parents were devastated. An aunt said Sloane cried herself to sleep because I had ruined her summer. Dad left one voicemail. "Just tell us you're safe. Your mother is upset. We can work through this if you come home and apologize for leaving the way you did." Apologize. I listened 3 times trying to find the part where anyone apologized to me. It was not there. I did not go back. I enrolled in community college, first studying general business because it felt practical, then switching to hospitality management after my hotel manager noticed I was unusually good at calming angry guests. Hotel work made sense to me. A lobby was a family room with rules. People arrived exhausted, disappointed, demanding, excited, grieving, drunk, in love, furious, or lost, and the job was not to judge how they looked while they felt those things. The job was to see the problem clearly and help without making them smaller. I worked nights, then mornings, then events. I learned conference setup, staffing, guest recovery, vendor coordination, and how to rearrange a ballroom in 20 minutes because somebody's CEO suddenly hated round tables. By 24, I supervised banquets. At 26, I moved to Minneapolis for an operations role with a boutique hotel company. By 28, I was managing 2 properties. By 30, I directed guest operations across 5. My mother would have appreciated the title. I never told her. Leaving did not immediately cure what she had taught me. I hated photographs. Compliments made me suspicious. If a man said I looked nice, I assumed he wanted something or felt sorry for me. I kept clothes until they wore thin, because fitting room mirrors still sounded like my mother. Corinne eventually stood outside a dressing room while I tried on a green dress and said, "You understand your mother doesn't own every mirror in America, right?" I laughed, then cried so hard we had to leave the store. Healing was embarrassing sometimes. It was also slow. My family reached out mostly when they needed help. At 21, Mom emailed that Sloan had been accepted to an expensive private college and family should share opportunities. She suggested I contribute $5,000. I was earning $14 an hour. I ignored it. At 23, Dad called because the showroom had a rough quarter. He did not ask directly for money. He spent 15 minutes telling me how difficult things were until I asked whether he needed something. He said, "If you could loan us a couple thousand until Christmas, it would mean a lot." I sent 3,000 because I still wanted proof that I was not selfish. Nobody paid it back. Mom later posted a family Thanksgiving photo beside the caption, "So grateful our daughters always support each other." I was not in the picture. Sloan wore new boots. I stared at that post longer than I want to admit. At 25, I stopped sending money. Contact dropped almost completely. That taught me more than any argument could have. Dad still mailed birthday cards. Sometimes he wrote, "Proud of you." He never wrote, "I should have defended you." Sloan sent occasional messages around holidays. "Hope you're good." Mom's still impossible, lol. "You should visit sometime." She never acknowledged graduation. I answered politely but never gave her enough access to pretend we were close. Then, 10 years after I left, Dad had a mild heart scare. Not a heart attack, but enough to frighten him. He called me himself from a hospital room. "I don't want another decade to go by like this," he said. I wanted that sentence to mean he understood. I flew to Iowa. Mom met me in the hospital lobby and hugged me like we had spoken the previous week. "Look at you," she said, pulling back. "You finally learned what to do with your hair." 10 years disappeared in one sentence. I almost turned around. Dad asked me to stay through Thanksgiving. Against my better judgment, I did. Thanksgiving dinner showed me nothing had really changed. Sloan was 28 and recently engaged to a man named Reed Lawson, a physical therapist from Des Moines. Reed was warm, observant, and clearly loved her. Mom adored him because his family owned several successful clinics and, more importantly, because he looked excellent in photographs. During dinner, Mom announced that Sloan and Reed were planning the wedding this family deserves after everything we've survived. I had been home less than 24 hours and had already become part of everything. Sloan showed me inspiration photos, winter greenery, candlelight, champagne-colored dresses, a renovated courthouse hotel in downtown Des Moines. I told her it looked beautiful. "You should help," Mom said immediately. "Taryn basically does parties for a living." "I run hotel operations," I said. "Exactly. Boring details." Sloan laughed. I did not. Reed looked at me and said, "Only if you actually want to. We already have a coordinator." That was the first time anyone at the table checked whether my usefulness required consent. Mom waved him off. "Taryn likes being useful. It's her thing." I looked at Dad. He studied his plate. Again. Same man. Older floor. After dinner, Mom insisted on a family photograph. She positioned herself beside Sloan, Reed beside Sloan, Dad beside Mom. I stood at the end. Then Mom handed me the phone. "Can you take one first?" "Of course." I took a photograph of the four of them. Perfect, Mom said. Reed frowned. We need one with Taryn. Mom said, of course, in a minute. We never took it. Later that night, she posted the first picture with the caption, whole family under one roof again. My heart is full. I commented nothing. Corinne texted me a screenshot anyway. Whole family? She wrote. Apparently you became the roof. I laughed. Then I packed early the next morning and left. Reed sent me a message afterward. It was good meeting you. Sloane says things are complicated. I hope we see you at the wedding. I wrote back. Complicated is one word. For the next year, I remained distant. Sloane occasionally asked practical wedding questions. Did hotel room blocks usually require deposits? How many shuttle runs for 140 guests? Was plated dinner worth the cost? I answered short questions because they were short questions. Then the asks grew. Could I call a vendor I knew? Could I review the weekend schedule? Could I help negotiate late checkout? I finally said, you have a coordinator. Use her. Sloane responded with a sad face emoji, and then, I thought helping might be a way for us to reconnect. I stared at that sentence. It was exactly how my family worked. Access always arrived disguised as an assignment. I replied, if you want to reconnect, call me when you don't need anything. She did not call. 3 months before the wedding, Mom texted from her own number for the first time in years. Sloane really wants you there. I know we've all made mistakes. This wedding could finally put the past behind us. I should have stopped at, we've all made mistakes. That phrase was family code for nobody naming who did what. Still, part of me wanted to attend. Not because I believed a wedding could fix us. Because I was tired of my absence being used as evidence that I was the one who rejected family. I wrote back, I'll come as a guest. I'm not working the wedding. Mom replied with a heart. Sloane called that evening. Her voice sounded emotional. Thank you. You don't need to thank me. I do. Reed keeps saying he doesn't understand why we can't fix this. I asked whether she did. Silence. I think we were kids when everything started. You were 16. I was 18. Exactly. Mom wasn't a kid. More silence. Then Sloane said, can we just get through the wedding without reopening everything? I should have asked why attending required silence. Instead, I said yes. The manipulation started slowly. Mom asked whether I had booked a room, then whether I planned to give Sloane cash or a gift. Then she mentioned how modern weddings cost more than houses used to. I ignored every hint. 6 weeks before the wedding, Dad called. Your mother and Sloane are stressed about money. Then they should reduce the wedding. They've already paid deposits. Okay, they're short on the final hotel balance. I said nothing. He continued. You've done well, Taryn. There it was. How much? Your mother thinks 36,000 would finish everything cleanly. I laughed because the alternative was screaming. Dad, you called me for $36,000? I'm asking you to think about your sister. I have spent 12 years thinking about my sister every time somebody tells me family means I should pay for the privilege of being treated like one. Nobody is saying that. Are you? He went silent. Did Sloane ask you to call? Your mother thought it would mean more coming from me. Of course she did. I said no. Dad sounded disappointed, then asked me not to make money. Another reason the family stays broken. I wrote that sentence in Corinne's old notebook after we hung up. People who rewrite reality depend on everyone forgetting the original version. I remembered. A week later, Sloane texted. Dad said you said no. I'm not mad. Just surprised you wouldn't want to do something meaningful after missing so much of my life. I replied, a wedding gift and 12 years of family history are separate things. She wrote, everything is separate to you when family needs something. I almost did not attend after that. Reed sent me a message 2 days later about an unrelated hotel question, and I realized he probably knew nothing about the request. That mattered. I decided I would go, smile, give Sloane a normal wedding gift, and leave after dinner if necessary. The invitation listed me as Miss Taryn Mercer, no sister of the bride, but that did not surprise me. The wedding weekend began with a welcome dinner Friday night at the hotel. I arrived in a dark blue dress, checked into my room, and spent 10 minutes staring at myself in the mirror because returning to Iowa still had the power to make me 18. Then I remembered Corinne. My mother did not own every mirror in America. I went downstairs. Mom saw me first. Her eyes moved over my dress, hair, shoes, and body with the same assessing sweep she had used my entire childhood. "Wow," she said. "Minneapolis has been good to you." Then, almost immediately, "Sloan still photographs softer, but you look very sophisticated." 12 years of distance, and she still needed a ranking. I smiled. "Hi, Mom." She looked irritated that I did not participate. Dad hugged me. Sloan hugged me for the photographer, pulling away the second the flash ended. Reed gave me a genuine hug and said, "I'm glad you came." The dinner was pleasant on the surface. Mom told stories about Sloane's childhood. Every story positioned her as charming, beloved, easy. At one point, Reed's mother asked whether Sloane and I had shared a room growing up. Mom laughed. "Oh no, they were opposites. Sloane needed beauty sleep. Taryn stayed up reading like a little accountant." People smiled politely. I felt 18 again for half a second. Then I looked at Reed. He was not laughing. After dinner, Mom approached with a glass of wine and said, "Tomorrow morning, family photos are at 11. Okay. Actually, Taryn, it might be easier if you come downstairs around noon. The bridal suite is crowded. Family photos are at 11. She gave me the patient smile adults use with children they consider slow. Immediate family photos. "I'm Sloane's sister." Technically, yes. Technically. I almost admired the efficiency of it. "What does technically mean?" Mom lowered her voice. "Sloane has a very specific aesthetic. Reads family photographs beautifully together, and she doesn't want the morning becoming tense." I stared at her. "Because I'm ugly?" Her face changed. "Oh my God, Taryn. Are we really back here? You tell me. You just asked me to skip family pictures." I said the bridal suite is crowded. "And I'm what? Too large emotionally? This is exactly why everyone is nervous around you." There it was. The old system. Hurt her, then call the reaction evidence. I said, "I'll follow the schedule the bride sends me directly." Mom walked away furious. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a number I did not recognize. "Taryn, this is Beth from the bridal party. I think I accidentally got added to your family logistics chat instead of you. I'm sending this because some of it is about you, and it feels wrong." 4 screenshots followed. My hands went cold. The group chat was called Wedding Inner Circle. Mom, Dad, Sloane, 2 aunts, and the wedding coordinator were in it. The messages went back months. Mom: "Has Taryn confirmed she's coming?" Sloane: "Yes. Reed kept pushing me to invite her." Mom: "Good. Your father can bring up the money after she books the flight. She won't back out once she's invested." Sloane: "Do we really think she'll do 36? Mom: "She makes more than your father now. And she has no kids. What else does she spend it on?" My stomach twisted. Another screenshot. Dad: "She already said no." Mom: "Then we make her feel included this weekend. She's always wanted that. Let her think this is a fresh start." Sloane: "Fine. But I don't want her in getting ready photos." Mom: "Obviously. Aunt: "Why?" Sloane: "Because I don't want the day turning into some sister reconciliation story, and she always looks uncomfortable in pictures." Mom: "We'll get one after dinner if needed." Then the line that broke something in me completely. Sloane: "If she pays, she can have whatever picture she wants." Mom replied with a laughing emoji. My father reacted with a thumbs up. I sat alone at a small table outside the hotel ballroom, reading the messages again and again. Not because I did not understand them. Because I understood them too well. I had spent 12 years wondering whether I had exaggerated that graduation night. Whether distance had made the memory sharper than reality. Whether Mom had simply been thoughtless and Sloane too young to understand. Here they were at 30, 60, 62 years old, using the exact same system with more expensive decorations. Sloane was still the daughter whose special day deserved protection. I was still the useful one who could pay for it and stay outside the frame. I forwarded the screenshots to myself and thanked Beth. Then I went upstairs. I did not confront anyone. That surprised even me. The 18-year-old version of me would have run. The 25-year-old version would have written a furious message. At 30, I took off my shoes, washed my face, and slept. Saturday morning, I had breakfast alone. At 10:30, Sloane texted, "Hey, we're running behind. Probably easier if you come down at noon like Mom said. Love you. Love you." I stared at the words. Then I replied, "I'll be downstairs at 11. Three dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared. Taryn, please don't make today about proving something. I'm attending the family photo time listed on the schedule. You know what I mean. I do. At 11, I entered the hotel's second-floor salon, where the photographer had arranged Sloane's immediate family. Mom stopped smiling when she saw me. Dad looked toward the window. Reed's parents greeted me warmly. Sloane stood in the center in her wedding dress. Beautiful enough that for once I understood why my mother had spent 30 years turning beauty into currency. Sloane looked terrified that somebody might stop valuing it. "Taryn," she said tightly, "I thought we agreed noon." "We didn't." The photographer asked where I should stand. Mom answered before anyone else. "We're doing parents first." "Fine." Then parents and bride. Then parents, bride, groom. Then Sloane with Mom. Sloane with Dad. Sloane with Reed's parents. Sloane with cousins. I stood near the wall. Reed noticed. "Wait. We need sisters." Sloane said, "We can do that later." Reed frowned. "Why?" "Because we're behind." The photographer checked her schedule. "Actually, I have sister photo listed." Mom said, "That must be an old version." Reed looked between them. Then at me. "Taryn, do you want a photo with Sloane?" It was such a simple question. Nobody in my family had asked what I wanted once that morning. I wanted to be treated like her sister. "A photograph is optional." The room went quiet. Mom laughed nervously. "She's joking." "No, I'm not." Sloane whispered my name like a warning. Reed said, "What's going on?" asked Sloane. "Nothing is going on," she snapped. "My sister likes making normal things complicated." Reed's expression changed slightly. I recognized it because hotel work teaches you to watch when guests stop believing the first explanation. "Why wasn't she supposed to be here until noon?" he asked. Sloane looked at Mom. Mom said, "This is not the time." Which means there is an answer. I pulled out my phone. I had not planned to show him anything before the ceremony, but I was no longer willing to help protect a lie simply because the room was decorated. "Reed, before you ask me anything else, you should probably read something." Sloane went pale. "Taryn, don't." I looked at her. "Why?" She stepped toward me. "Because this is my wedding day. And yesterday was my life." I handed Reed the phone. He read the first screenshot, then the second. His jaw tightened. Sloane started explaining immediately. "Those messages look worse without context." Reed kept reading. Mom moved closer. "Reed, family's joke. You know that." He reached the line. "If she pays, she can have whatever picture she wants." His face changed completely. He looked at Sloane. "What is this?" I was frustrated. "You asked your sister for $36,000? Dad did." Dad finally spoke. "I brought it up." Sloane didn't directly ask. Reed scrolled upward. "She literally asks whether you think Taryn will do 36. Silence. Reed looked at me. "Did you ever offer to pay for the wedding?" "No." "Did Sloane tell you coming here was supposed to repair the family?" "Yes." Sloane started crying. "Because I wanted that too." "Then why does your chat say you didn't want her in the photos?" Reed asked. "Because I knew this would happen." "What would happen?" "She would make everything about how Mom treated her 15 years ago." 12, I said. Sloane glared at me. Reed noticed. "You remember the exact number when you're angry at her, but not when you want her money?" That silenced everyone. Mom stepped between them. "This is not a relationship issue. Taryn has resented Sloane since they were children." Reed turned to me. Is that true? Before I could answer, Mom did. Taryn ran away after graduation because she couldn't handle that her sister got attention. I laughed once. I did not mean to. That's the story? Reed looked at me. What happened at graduation? Sloane whispered. Please. I had protected that story for 12 years. Because releasing the video publicly would have felt like becoming my mother. I did not need a public audience now. I opened the old file Corinne had convinced me to save years earlier and handed Reed the phone. The video lasted 41 seconds. My mother's younger face appeared beneath a banner with my name. Taryn got the brains. Thank God, because the pretty jeans clearly went to her sister. Laughter. Sloane being pulled beside me. One daughter for running the business, one daughter for putting on the brochure. More laughter. Then the camera caught me looking toward Dad. He looked down. The video ended. Reed handed back the phone carefully. You left after that? That night. And nobody apologized? I looked at Dad. Not once. Dad's face crumpled. Mom said, it was a joke from 12 years ago. Reed stared at her. She was 18. Exactly. Old enough not to destroy a family over a joke. Something inside me became very calm. I didn't destroy the family, Mom. I left a room where everybody agreed my humiliation was entertainment. Sloane cried harder. You left me too. I looked at her. For the first time all morning, she sounded like my sister instead of my mother's daughter. I know. I was 16. I know. You never even asked if I was okay. Neither did you. She flinched. I thought you hated me. Mom told you that. Silence. Didn't she? Sloane looked at our mother. That was answer enough. Reed asked why Sloane invited me now. Sloane wiped her cheeks. Because you kept asking why she wasn't part of my life. And Mom said if Taryn came, maybe she'd help with the wedding. Reed's voice lowered. Did you invite her because you wanted her, or because you needed money? Both. I appreciated that she finally said something ugly without polishing it. Reed closed his eyes for a second. How much of our relationship have you done like this? Sloane stared at him. What does that mean? Telling me the version that gets you what you want. She said that was unfair. He reminded her she had told him I refused every attempt at reconciliation. She had never mentioned contacting me for college money, business help, or wedding money. She had told him I skipped Thanksgiving because I couldn't stand seeing her happy. She had not mentioned Mom making me take the family photograph and then posting it as the whole family. Reed looked physically ill. You told me your sister chose to stay outside, Sloane whispered. She did. After you kept putting her there. Nobody had a response. The photographer quietly left the room. Reed's father closed the salon doors. Downstairs, 160 guests were beginning to arrive. I suddenly wanted no part in what happened next. I'm leaving, I said. Sloane looked at me in panic. You can't. Why? Because everyone will ask why. There it was. Even then, the audience. Tell them I had somewhere I was wanted. Mom snapped. Do not walk out and humiliate your sister. I turned toward her. You still think the leaving is the humiliation? Reed said. Taryn, wait. I stopped. He looked at Sloane. I need an answer before she goes. Sloane asked what answer. His voice was quiet. Did you invite your sister because you wanted her here, or because you thought she'd be too desperate for a family to say no when you asked for money? Sloane's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Mom answered for her. That is an insulting question. Reed never looked away from Sloane. I didn't ask you. Sloane cried for several seconds before saying, I thought if she helped us, maybe it would prove she still cared. You mean paid? That's not fair. Then explain the difference. She could not. Reed removed his boutonniere and placed it on the table. Sloane stared at it. What are you doing? I'm not getting married today. The room collapsed without anyone raising their voice. Sloane grabbed his hand. Mom started talking rapidly about deposits, guests, embarrassment, family reputation. Dad finally told her to stop. She ignored him. Do you understand how much this costs? People drove from 3 states. The ballroom is full. The hotel is paid. Reed looked at her. Apparently not by the person you told me paid for it. Mom turned on me. Are you happy now? I almost felt sorry for her because she truly could not imagine an ending where I was not competing with Sloane. No. Don't lie. I didn't come here to stop a wedding. But you did. No. I stopped protecting the lie, holding it together. Dad sat down heavily. Sloane looked at me through tears. You always wanted Mom to choose you over me. That accusation had ruled our relationship for years. I finally understood why it was wrong. No, Sloane. I wanted Mom to stop making us compete for the same chair. She looked confused. What? There was room for both of us. There always was. She convinced you being beautiful, made you valuable, and convinced me being useful was the only way I could earn value. You got praised. I got used. Neither of us was loved without a job description. Mom said, "That is ridiculous." Dad whispered, "No, it isn't." Everyone looked at him. My father, who had spent 3 decades studying floors, finally lifted his head. "It isn't." Mom stared at him. "Rick." He shook his head. I should have stopped the graduation speech. My chest tightened. 12 years late. Still true. I should have stopped a lot of things, he continued. I kept telling myself Marlene was just blunt, and Taryn was strong enough to handle it. Then, when Taryn left, I let Marlene say she was jealous because that story required nothing from me. Mom's face hardened. "So now everyone blames me," Dad replied. "You did it. I allowed it. Those are different failures." It was the first honest sentence I had ever heard him say about our family. Mom stormed out. Sloane sank into a chair in her wedding dress. Reed left with his parents to speak privately. Downstairs, the ceremony was delayed, then canceled. Nobody made a dramatic ballroom announcement. The wedding coordinator told guests there was a family emergency and that dinner would still be available for anyone who wished to stay. Rumors traveled anyway. They always do. But I refused to become the narrator of Sloane's humiliation. I went upstairs, changed out of my dress, and packed my suitcase. Before I left, Sloane knocked on my door. She was still wearing the wedding dress, though someone had removed her veil. For a second, she looked 16 again. "Can I come in?" she asked. The fact that she asked mattered. I stepped aside. She sat on the edge of the hotel chair and stared at her hands. "Reed won't talk to me. He probably needs time." "Do you think he's leaving me?" "That's between you and Reed." She laughed bitterly. "You sound like a therapist. Hotels teach boundaries faster than therapy sometimes." Silence. Then she said, "I hated you when you left." I figured. "Mom said you left because you couldn't stand that people liked me more." "I know. She said you thought I was stupid." "I never thought you were stupid." Sloane looked at me. "I thought you did. I thought you liked watching her hurt me." Tears filled her eyes. "Sometimes I did." The honesty shocked both of us. She continued before I could respond. "Not the bad stuff, but when Mom compared us and I won, it felt good. Because, when she was talking about you, she wasn't criticizing me." There it was. The family system in one sentence. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I said nothing. "I know that doesn't fix it." "It doesn't," she nodded. "When Dad asked you for the money, I knew it was wrong. I also thought, you have this big career, no kids, no mortgage like ours, no wedding. I thought 36,000 would mean less to you than canceling things would mean to me." I looked at her. "That is almost exactly how Mom sees me." Sloane cried harder. "I know." "And the pictures?" She covered her face. "I didn't want you in the getting ready photos." "Why?" "Because Reed's sister saw your LinkedIn picture and said you were striking." I know how stupid that sounds. I stared at her. "You excluded me because someone thought I looked good?" "Because I spent my whole life being the pretty one." Her voice cracked. "And if you weren't the ugly smart sister anymore, I didn't know what that made me." I sat across from her. For the first time, I saw the cage Mom had built around Sloane too. Hers had prettier wallpaper, still a cage. "You know what it makes you?" I asked. "What?" "Sloane, that should have been enough." She began sobbing. I did not rush to hug her. Compassion and access are different things. Eventually, she asked, "Can we ever fix this?" "Maybe. What do I do?" "Stop asking what will make me forgive you. Start becoming someone who would not do this again even if I never forgive you." She nodded slowly. I left the hotel 20 minutes later. Mom sent 17 messages before I reached Minneapolis. "You ruined her life. I hope your career keeps you warm. A decent sister would have waited until after the wedding. Reed's family thinks we're monsters now. Your father is blaming himself because you manipulated him." The final message said, "You always wanted to prove you were better than Sloan." I blocked her. Not temporarily. Not to teach a lesson. Permanently. That was the cleanest boundary I had ever set. Dad called a week later. I answered. He apologized without saying Mom's name until the end. "I failed you because I was more afraid of your mother's anger than your pain." I cried after we hung up, but I did not promise reconciliation. Dad started therapy at 62. He moved out 3 months later. He and Mom eventually separated, not because I demanded it, because once he said the truth aloud, apparently he could no longer return comfortably to silence. Sloan and Reed did not marry. They tried couples counseling for several months, but Reed ended the engagement. Sloan later told me his final reason was not the money. It was that she had spent years giving him edited versions of uncomfortable truths because she believed being loved required controlling how she was perceived. He said he couldn't marry someone if he had to wonder what information had been removed from the frame. She told me. That sounded painful and fair. Mom blamed me for the breakup. Sloan eventually stopped. That mattered. 6 months after the canceled wedding, Sloan mailed me a handwritten letter. No request. No family update designed to trigger guilt. Just an apology. She wrote. I thought being the favorite meant I had won. I didn't understand that Mom had simply given us different ways to earn approval. You had to be useful. I had to be beautiful. The minute I wasn't performing perfectly, she turned on me too. That doesn't excuse what I did to you. It only explains why I kept doing it long after I was old enough to know better. I did not answer for 3 weeks. Then I texted, "Thank you for writing it." That was the beginning. Not forgiveness. Beginning. We rebuilt slowly over the next 2 years. Coffee when I visited Dad. Occasional calls. No borrowing money. No pretending childhood was funny. When she caught herself making a joke about being the pretty one, she stopped and apologized without me asking. When I got promoted, she congratulated me without adding that I had always been the career sister. When she started dating again, she did not ask whether I approved. We began meeting each other outside the jobs Mom assigned us. Dad and I also developed a relationship, but with limits. He visited Minneapolis twice. The first time he stood inside my apartment looking at photographs of friends, coworkers, Corinne's children, and trips he knew nothing about. "I missed your whole adulthood," he said. Yes. I did not comfort him. Grief sometimes belongs to the person who created the absence. Mom remained blocked. Relatives occasionally told me she had changed, was lonely, had lost friends after the wedding story spread, regretted everything. Maybe she did. I hope she became healthier. I no longer needed to witness it. Cutting contact was not revenge. It was the first decision about our relationship that did not require her approval. A year after the wedding, Corinne convinced me to host Thanksgiving in Minneapolis. 12 people came. Friends from work, Corinne and her husband, Dad, and eventually Sloan. I almost said no when Sloan asked. Then I realized fear should not make every decision either. I invited her with one condition. Nobody talks about the canceled wedding unless you bring it up. She agreed. Dinner was chaotic. Corinne burned sweet potatoes. Dad brought store-bought pie and tried to pretend he had baked it. Sloan helped wash dishes without taking a picture first. At one point, Corinne's husband suggested a group photo. My entire body tightened automatically. Sloan noticed. "We don't have to," she said. I looked around the room. Nobody was arranging us according to attractiveness or usefulness. Nobody needed a perfect family image. "No," I said, "I want one." We set the phone on a timer. I instinctively moved toward the end. Corinne grabbed my wrist. Absolutely not. Your house. Middle. Everyone laughed. Not at me. With me. I stood in the center. The picture came out terrible. Dad blinked. Sloane was looking sideways. Corinne's youngest son had half a roll in his mouth. I framed it. That photograph did more for me than 1,000 carefully worded apologies, because nobody needed me outside the frame for the picture to work. I am 33 now. I still work in hospitality. I still notice everything in rooms because some childhood skills become careers if you are lucky. I no longer hate mirrors. I also no longer need to love every photograph of myself. That was another kind of freedom. My mother taught me to treat appearance like a verdict. Healing taught me a face is simply where your life happens. Some days mine looks tired, some days strong, some days older than I expect. None of those things determine whether I deserve a place at the table. Sloane learned something similar about beauty. She cut her hair short the year after the wedding, something Mom had forbidden because long blonde hair was her best feature. When she sent me the first photo, she wrote, "Apparently my head remained attached." I laughed for 5 minutes. Dad learned that peace bought with silence is usually being financed by somebody else's pain. He still apologizes too much sometimes. I tell him changed behavior matters more. He shows up. He listens. When he disagrees, he says it instead of studying the floor. That is progress. The biggest lesson for me was that leaving a toxic family does not automatically make you free. I left at 18, but for years I still carried Mom's ranking system into every room. I compared myself to women I did not know. I treated usefulness like rent I had to pay for friendship. I said yes too quickly because being needed felt safer than being wanted. I worked overtime because praise for competence felt more reliable than affection. I had escaped the house without escaping the rules. The wedding finally exposed how deep those rules still went. My family believed that if they offered me a little inclusion, I would pay $36,000 for it. That assumption was insulting, but it was not invented from nowhere. For years I had shown them I might pay for crumbs of belonging. $3,000 when Dad called about the showroom. Free advice when Sloane needed help. Polite responses after insults. Every time I ignored the pattern, I taught them the door was still available if they knocked with the right emergency. Self-worth was closing it. Not angrily, clearly. It was understanding that being excluded from a photograph hurts, but buying your way into one hurts longer. It was realizing I could love Sloane and still require evidence of change. I could forgive Dad and still refuse to erase what he allowed. I could hope Mom healed and never speak to her again. People sometimes think boundaries are proof you have stopped loving someone. Sometimes boundaries are what happens when you finally include yourself among the people your love should protect. If I had written my own revenge ending at 18, I probably would have imagined becoming beautiful enough to make Mom regret every insult, successful enough to make Sloane jealous, wealthy enough that everyone begged me to return. None of that would have been freedom. It would have kept Mom as the judge and simply changed the evidence I presented. The satisfying ending turned out to be much quieter. My mother's opinion no longer determines whether I like the woman in the mirror. Sloane's attention no longer decides whether I feel chosen. Dad's guilt is no longer mine to soothe. My money does not purchase family access. My competence does not make me free labor. My absence from somebody's perfect photograph does not mean I disappeared. I built a life full of people who notice when I am missing. That is enough. More than enough. And if there is one thing I would tell the 18-year-old girl standing beneath that graduation banner while her family laughed, it would be this. You do not need to become prettier, richer, more successful, or more impressive to prove that room was wrong. The room was wrong because your humiliation should never have been the price of everyone else having a good time. Leave if you need to. Heal slowly. Keep evidence when people rewrite history. But do not spend the rest of your life trying to win the competition they invented. You were never supposed to compete for the right to be loved. So tell me honestly, if your mother publicly humiliated you for years, your sister benefited from being the favorite, And 12 years later, they invited you to her wedding, mainly because they thought you would pay tens of thousands of dollars just to feel included again. Would genuine accountability ever be enough for you to rebuild those relationships? Or would discovering that family had put a price on belonging be the moment you permanently walked away?